Will you pray with me? And this prayer is, you'll hear some of the words repeated in our prayers for the people. God, grant us wisdom to communicate effectively, knowing when to speak and when to keep silent. Grant us courage to live out our faith, help to do the work given us to do, and the will to take up the cross and follow. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. The scriptures this week were heavy on wisdom, and that made me think of my father. The wisdom of Rufus, which I'm a little put out. This is an aside. When I go shopping on Amazon, it offers to let me ask questions of Rufus. And I haven't had the nerve to do it yet, but yeah, it also amuses me. He died 11 years ago at the age of 80. He had spent many years supervising commercial construction sites across northern Indiana and lower Michigan. It was said that he could reprimand one of his workers with such calm that only 20 or 30 minutes later did the individual realize that they had been scolded. My parents rarely raised their voices at us 6 children, although one look could easily put us in our places. So today, it's a little disconcerting when we hear wisdom shouting in the streets, frankly sounding like a crazy person. Someone that I've seen, either on a corner in Hillsdale or in Adrian, and chastising us for our foolishness, I guess. And I'm not sure, is wisdom angry or disgusted? And why is she laughing at people? Because they do foolish things. Then we have creation, declaring God's glory without words or language in our song. We have Jesus and Peter going toe to toe. I imagine there were some raised voices there as well. And then we have James reminding us of the potent possibilities that arise depending on how we use our tongues. Communication matters. Words matter. Listening and attending to what is communicated matters. Now, with that as a little bit of background, my general focus this morning is on the Gospel of Mark. And I'd like to note that the Revised Common Lectionary has skipped some significant parts of Mark. First, the feeding of the 4,000. Maybe they thought to give us a little grace after 5 weeks of the bread of life. But they also skipped Jesus' healing of a blind man brought to him by his friends at Bethsaida. There's no mention of the man's desire for healing or his faith in Jesus' ability to heal. But we do see in this story that the healing process is a 2-step process. First, partial sight is given. Ultimately, full vision is given. And one of Jesus' interesting thing, how Jesus sends him straight home, telling him not to even go into the village. And I find this a little curious. But I think it's synonymous with Jesus saying, don't tell anybody. Which also I find curious. Jesus continues, I'm jumping, excuse me. The healing process, I think, may be symbolic of what we see in today's exchange between Jesus, Peter, the disciples, and the crowd. We see that along the way, the disciples are often confused. They begin to exhibit some understanding, and Jesus continues to teach toward the goal of giving them full vision about what he is doing and the moment he is inviting the movement, he is inviting them to join. But I'm not sure that that vision is ever truly perfected. I'd like to present today's gospel in 3 acts, and I call this the midterm. I've got a student here. In Act 1, Jesus asks, "Do you know who I am? Do you understand what I have been trying to teach you?" And he begins this in a really interesting way. It's like he's taking a poll. Who do people say that I am? What are you hearing on the streets? And the response is Elijah. Some say John the Baptist, some say one of the other prophets. I don't think we had anybody to make a pie chart on this. They might want to work on that. Second question is, who do you say that I am? And Peter, God loved Peter, he nails it. You are the Messiah. The Messiah, the anointed one. Ooh, it's a little edgy because he's giving him a royal title. This could be perceived as a challenge to the Roman Empire. And Jesus sternly told them not to tell anyone about him. Curtain closes and we come to Act 2. I will call this a hard thing. Jesus and Peter go toe-to-toe, and things get hot. Jesus began teaching them, predicting the suffering that he was facing. And Peter, he's heard enough. And I'm not sure when he lost Jesus' train of thought there. How much did Peter actually heard before he's taken a huge double take and in Blum speak goes, whoop, whoop, whoop. Yeah. That's what they do when they see something going sideways, often before it's too late to do anything about it. Which may be kind of what happened in Peter's case as well. Peter's objection is evidence that, but to Peter's credit, his objection is evidence that he's beginning to understand where this is going, and he is not having it. And I can only imagine the choice words that came to his mind as he drew Jesus aside. And that's what friends do, right? We try to honor somebody's dignity and pull them aside and say, no, that's not the way this is. And I don't know about you, but if somebody pulls me aside, if they're going to yell back at me, I prefer that they do it in private, that they respect that. Not Jesus. Mm-mm. Jesus turns to the crowd and to his disciples and responds to Peter. He wants everyone to hear what he's about to say, and they are strong words. Get behind me, Satan. Now, I don't think he did this to humiliate Peter, but to be clear that all hear what he has to say. And I wonder if perhaps he's having a flashback to those days in the desert where he was tempted by Satan. Satan offering him all the power and all the glory of the empire. Easy peasy. Clearly, the gospel writer wants us to remember that and to draw that connection. Jesus confronts the powers and chooses the power of the suffering servant. He says, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. It matters where we stand and how we view the world and our place in it. It matters what we allow to motivate us. It matters how we choose our priorities. Who or what will we follow? Act 3, Jesus continues to teach about the depth and the cost of discipleship. He began to teach them what it means to risk the suffering of the cross, the centrality of the cross, the inevitability of the cross to follow him. It is not suffering for the sake of suffering, not for the sake of making yourself miserable to think that is what makes you feel holy. It's rather risking discomfort to work for justice and the well-being of all, knowing that if you're trying to go against the culture, there will be consequences. Like Peter, it's easy for us to get lost in the enormity of what discipleship means, the dramatic search for transformation. So much so that I think we fail to see the small tasks that are in front of us, the daily needs that we have or that others have. We forget how Jesus met one person at a time, listening, showing compassion, and healing. We see Jesus feeding the thousands, and we fail to see the hungry person in front of us. St. Augustine, many years ago, described sin as being curved inward on oneself, but that God's redemption helps us to unfurl and open up. And you see just in that motion how if we're curved inward, we have nothing to give. If we unfurl and allow God's love to motivate us, we have open arms. We are seeing the people around us. We have something to give. Try to save yourself, and you will end up doing things that you would not normally do. Commit yourself to the way of the cross, and even if you die, you will have lived a full life. This reading represents Jesus at the crossroads in the Gospel of Mark. And from here on out, he turns toward Jerusalem and the inevitability of the cross. So what does this matter in our world today? What difference does it make? I offer these observations. In this election year, perhaps more than any other, I hear people on both sides who are terrified, and that is the language they use, terrified at what will happen if the other side wins. These are good people, smart people, and some of them disagree with me. And perhaps I think they are foolish. I get it. I have my opinion, and I will exercise my right, my duty to vote. But regardless of the outcome, we need to remember who we are and whose we are. It does not change our calling to extending love and generosity to the world around us. I'd like to say it does not change the work we are given to do, although the reality is that perhaps it will change the justice that we need to fight for. The marginalized people who need our voice. So I think it challenges us, these scriptures challenge us to think about what it means to be wise and to seek truth and justice. I'm really struck by the relationship that Jesus and Peter had, that they could get in each other's faces and have it out without ending their friendship. And we know this because in the next chapter of Mark, Peter goes with Jesus as he ascends the mountain at what we know as the Transfiguration. We look at those scriptures in February, so we'll not be continuing there next week. But I find that remarkable, and what a gift that is, to have someone in your life who can speak that level of truth to you and to whom you can speak that level of truth. And I encourage each one here to think about who those people in your lives are. These are relationships to be celebrated. And I hope that that's the level at which we can speak to each other here at St. Michael's. Because I think what we have now, and it reminds me a bit of the verses from 1 Corinthians 13, where we see in the glass darkly, but one day we will see face to face. We have partial sight, and what we're working for here as we gather is to find our full vision along the way with Jesus. And that's why it matters. May it be so. Amen.